Francesco for once again inviting me to one of these extraordinarily interesting and stimulating dialogues. Of course, you didn't really have much choice about inviting me. You can't have a conference on water without a British speaker, given our history as the country where it always rains. And even Julius Caesar wrote in his diaries about the miserable British weather with frequent rain, and Tacitus, the great Roman historian, said the British sky is always obscured by continuous rain. Well, thanks, Julius Caesar, thanks, Tacitus. Actually, you were both wrong. Venice and Rome get more rainfall every year than London ever does, but there we are. History is often based on misunderstanding. But rain is not the only reason I feel I'm entitled to have a few words to say here. As in the case of Venice, the sea has played an enormous role in Britain's national history. And that's not very surprising, given we're an island and Venice a lagoon. Venice preceded Britain as a great naval power, reaching its peak with the victory in the Battle of Lepanto in 1571. But really, from about that time until the Second World War, the rise of American naval power, British sea power was the world's greatest and was used to extend the British Empire around the world. So the seas have always been of vital interest to us, just as they were to Venice, and they remain so today. Now, Francesco, you've set out some of the broad themes you want this soft power conference to cover: the challenges of climate change, new threats to agriculture and food, the role of the European Union in negotiating the future of the Union. So these are all of them hugely important and grandiose themes. But we cannot all speak on all of them without being repetitive. So I'm going to focus just on three narrower and more specific issues, which I believe are relevant. First, deep sea mining. Second, the future governance of the Arctic Ocean. And third, the rising risk of naval warfare, particularly in the Asia-Pacific, for the first time, effectively, since the Second World War. And I've chosen these three issues because, for me, they illustrate the tension between soft power hopes and ambitions, very desirable hopes and aspirations, and hard power realities. Now, some of you may feel I'm taking the discussion rather down market by raising these issues, but I just don't think one can speak credibly about soft power without also setting the context of hard power. So first of my three subjects, deep sea mining. All of us in Europe are committed to achieving a zero carbon future based on clean energy. We can't do that unless we have access to many rare minerals. They're needed for battery technology, solar panels, electric vehicles, a large number of new technology products. Many of these rare minerals are under near monopoly control by a handful of countries. And those countries are in a position to hold us to ransom by blocking access to those minerals. I would cite just one example, though there are many others. China, for example, has already imposed export constraints on gallium and germanium. They're not the sort of things one eats for breakfast, but they are actually very important in modern technology. And it could in future, use granting access to them as a means to put pressure on us to relax our opposition to some of their political and military objectives. For instance, accepting Taiwan's reunification with China by force. Now, to avoid that, we must have access to alternative sources of rare earths and other rare minerals. And we know that many of them are found on the seabed of the world's oceans. And the result is that deep sea mining will become essential to meeting our zero carbon commitments, as well as our future technological success. There is, of course, as always, a downside. There's a risk that deep sea mining will damage the ocean's ecosystems. And for that reason, the 2021 Global Diversity Summit imposed a moratorium, a block, if you like, on deep sea mining, a good example of soft power in action. But while soft power can bring about negotiations of rules to govern how we access minerals, it would be strategically another matter to try to block them off. Yes, we must do everything possible to minimize the environmental and marine biodiversity effects of deep sea mining. We must do everything possible to obey rules set by the International Seabed Authority. But our strategic interests mean we must be ready to go ahead with seabed mining, even without a global consensus if necessary. We simply can't afford to be shut out or prevented from achieving our clean energy ambitions by countries exploiting their monopoly power. Rules, yes. A ban on deep sea mining, no. My second point relates to the Arctic Ocean. The melting of the Arctic ice cap and the resulting rise in sea levels is already impacting all of us, and the situation is potentially worse in the Antarctic. It's a major soft power interest to deal with this. There are other soft power interests at stake in the Arctic as well, particularly new sea routes and freedom to use them without interference. The melting of polar ice is opening new sea lanes between Europe, Asia, and the United States, which cut journey times by as much as 50% and greatly reduce the carbon footprint of merchant shipping, which at the moment is a very major problem. The downside is that the melting of the Arctic ice will also open the Arctic to dangerous strategic competition. There is already an alarming increase in Russian naval and military activity, with the aim of bringing the Arctic under greater Russian control. And that would give them the ability to impose maritime blockades, cutting off those cheaper and more climate-friendly sea routes via the Arctic, somewhat similar to what they're doing already in the Black Sea by, in effect, blackmailing Africa into supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine by starving it of access to Ukrainian grain. Now, obviously we have a soft power interest in seeing more effective internationally agreed governance for the Arctic region. But no treaty or declaration on its own will achieve that. It will only come from deterrence, from matching their hard power in the Arctic. And I would have to say that NATO will be as, if not more, important than the United Nations to ensuring economically as well as environmentally friendly governance of the Arctic. It's a good example of hard power being used as a precondition for achieving admirable soft power goals. And that brings me to my third and last point about the growing risk of the sea again becoming the theatre of naval confrontation and actual warfare. China has built the world's largest navy in terms of numbers of ships. It claims sovereignty over a number of small islands and reefs to which other countries also have claims. It has turned many of them into military bases, despite having promised not to do so. It conducts exercises to practice the economic blockade of Taiwan. And so the threat to freedom of navigation is becoming ever more acute. Now, all of us have an interest in ensuring freedom of navigation globally to boost trade and economic development. That's crucial to our own prosperity. And nowhere is that interest greater than the Asia-Pacific region, given its rapid economic growth and the vast increase in international commerce with the region. Now, the law of the sea provides the rules for the expansion of trade which has taken place, and it also codifies freedom of navigation. And that is a great soft power agreement. But a law cannot by itself, sadly, guarantee freedom of navigation and peaceful transit of the world's oceans. That requires the activities of the United States Navy with support from its allies, and they maintain naval deterrence against the rising threat from those who threaten the economic lines of communication. Once again, a major soft power interest for all of us depends on hard power to prevent it. Of course, we hope never that deterrence will not ever need to be used. That is true of all forms of deterrence. But without it, our economies could find us facing incalculable economic consequences. Now, I am not a hard power junkie, as some of you may be tempted to think. I love polar bears and I love whales as much as any of you do. I spent a lifetime working with soft power to reach solutions to international problems. And I think soft power has achieved outstanding results, not least the Paris Agreement on global climate change. But do always remember, hard power is not a barrier to achieving soft power ambitions. It's an inescapable precondition for realizing our soft power dreams. As we have learned today, there is an intimate connection between water and security. Venice, in its heyday, understood it needed soft and hard power, and we should do so too in the even more dangerous world of today. Thank you.